Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome everyone to this In Conversation series with the Global Compact Network in Pakistan. This is our 10th In Conversation series, Goal to the Finish, and we're with industry experts and sustainability champions today to talk about what they're doing to advance goal number 10. So as we've said in the past, it goes without saying that this time that we're in right now is all about the next decade of action. And what we're doing is answering the UN General Secretary General's call to action by bringing people together to talk about and advancing the SDGs. And from Pakistan perspective, there's a lot of great work that's happening here. So we've got some amazing insights from Saeed Akhtar from Ahmed Textiles and Miss Nabila Faisal from Hino Motors. So welcome to you both. Welcome to this In Conversation series. Just to give everyone a bit of context about how we run this conversation, it is very much that. It's not an interview. It's not a panel discussion. It's a conversation amongst friends, excuse me, about the great work that's being done to advance SDG 10. But also an opportunity to learn a little bit about your journey, your insights, some of the opportunities that you've come across during that journey, but also some of the challenges that you faced as well in navigating what the SDGs mean for you and your company. And from that, we hope that we can inspire people who are listening in now and later, who have already started their journeys on the SDG, or are about to start on the SDGs journey, to help them understand a little bit better about some of the things that they can do to gain momentum and accelerate action for a better world. So the SDGs In Conversation series is our opportunity to unite business in Pakistan. And as I said, it's a response to the UN Secretary General's call to action last year to really advance and accelerate some of the work that's being done. So those people that are listening in live right now can tweet, message, whatever it is that we do on social media these days. There's so many platforms. But if I can ask you to remember the hashtag Uniting Business and Global Compact Network Pakistan, GCNP. For those that wish to take screenshots, please feel free to do so. And this webinar is being recorded, so it will be available later on our YouTube channel. Anyone that wishes to engage and connect with Saeed Bhai and Nabila can do so via their LinkedIn, and I'm sure they'll be more than accommodating to respond to you. So if everyone's comfortable, we'll get started. Let me just see, we've got some questions coming in already as well. So what I'll try and do is just ask you a little bit around why this particular SDG is important to you as an organization, but also as an individual. So do think about that. Like I said earlier, why is this SDG important so that other people can understand the context of the value and the opportunity around this particular SDG, but also the journey that you've taken both personally to champion this particular SDG, but also what you're doing as an organization. And we'll get the opportunity to discuss some of the things that you've been working on as well in detail. And like I said at the beginning to you both, the conversation doesn't stop here. So this is just a precursor to having more conversations, more action, and advancing what we're doing collectively to accelerate the global goals. Any questions from you guys?
Yes.
Not right now, we're just listening.
Fantastic. So for our audience that are listening in right now, if you've got any questions, just drop them in the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. Nida will pick them up and then pass them across to me, and I'll try and frame those questions as best I can to our guests. We won't get through all of the questions, as usually the case, but we'll have the opportunity at least to come back to you, Saeed Bhai and Nabila, in terms of asking you follow-up questions as well. So let me just check. I think we have some questions here. So let's just make sure that we've got everyone. So this is the great thing about modern technology. Okay, here we go. So, okay, we've got some chat here. And I think there's just a couple of questions around, do share some examples. Someone's commented about no sound. So if anyone can't hear us, then I think the best option really is just to click your sound speaker icon and then click it back again, and usually that should work. Okay, so let's get started. So Nabila, if I start with you, so you're at Hino Park Motors. This particular SDG, SDG 10 that we're talking about today, is a very pertinent SDG in the sense that it underpins many of the other SDGs. It interlinks into so many of the other impact areas that we're working on across all of the 17 SDGs. Why is this particular SDG important to you as Nabila, but also as Hino Park Motors as well? And then Saeed, I'll come back to you with a similar question.
Okay, thank you for the question, Faisal. Actually, if I talk about as an organization, Hino Park, so as you know, Hino Park is a Japanese company with having 59% shares of Hino Motors Japan. And as per our principle, we are following Hino Credo, which divert us to follow the we have to respect. We are obliged to respect the diversity of our employees, and we have to provide a versatile corporate culture to them. It's per our principle, rules and policy. We should be providing corporate like personal growth culture ground to them. So Hino Park is more into diversification of the employees. We believe in the personal growth. We believe on the equal opportunities, giving equal opportunity safety culture to them. And that's why we have provided a platform to all our employees, regardless of their age, race, gender, religion, anything. So we believe on that. We've already adopted the gender equality policy back in 2008. And following that gender equality policy religiously in Hino Park. So whatever opportunities are given to employees is all equal for everyone. We never do any discrimination. There's no tolerance, zero tolerance policy against the discrimination based on the race, age, you can say religion, nationality, anything. So as per their corporate policy, as per their principal policy, we are all trying, and we follow strictly the laws and regulations on gender equality and harassment policy, giving the equal opportunities to our employees, because we believe that when we give the opportunities to all the employees, they can flourish more. And that's give a better innovations, better reputation to the company. So we're all working on it, and Hino Park is one of the champions for that. As an individual, if you ask me, being a female, yes, inequality is very important for females, because especially, as you know, in Pakistan, accepting females as an employee, as a head, and as a leader is very difficult. So we have to strive a lot, especially when you're working mom, working woman, you have to do a lot of work-life balance. So fortunately, I personally share that I enjoy Hino Park before my marriage. Now my daughter is in second year, enter. So it means I have been given that opportunity. I have provided that safe working environment by the company. So I never thought of leaving it, and they have also helped me doing my career development through education and training. So it's individually it's very important for me also, and Alhamdulillah, the company has provided me all the facilities for my career development, education, training, other opportunities. So it's important for as a company also for its growth, for diversification, for having a corporate culture, and for me also. So it's very important for
that's really helpful and inspirational as well, because I know one of the challenges in reducing inequalities is looking at how to find the right balance within an organization, not just because it's an organization, but also because of the nature of the industry it's in. So we talk about manufacturing, particularly for countries like Pakistan, that sometimes the jobs don't fit, perhaps in traditional sense, in terms of gender roles as well. So that's something that we'll talk about, obviously, later on in the conversation. Saeed, I want to move across to you, and obviously you come from obviously manufacturing as well. What are the reasons behind you wanting to champion SDG 10? Obviously, Nabila has talked about the innovation side, that it really presents an opportunity to be innovative, because now we can think differently. What's your experience been like in championing Goal 10 within your organization, and why? And I'm keen to learn from a male perspective. We heard Nabila's perspective as a woman in terms of wanting to champion Goal 10. What about you? Why is Goal 10 important to you?
Well, first of all, thanks you and for providing us an opportunity to showcase what we are currently doing with respect to SDG 10. And also, it's a wonderful opportunity to learn as well from somebody's experiences. Well, first, the topic of inequality and how personally I link with it, right? And then I'll talk about the organization. So to me, inequality is all about state of not being equal, right? And when this is there, then you have the self-worth, which is directly targeted. And if that is there, then nobody can deliver the optimum amount of results. So for me, inequality is absolutely not something that somebody can digest. When we talk about the overall sustainability, right, this particular SDG is linked with so many other SDGs. And this inequality, when we try to define it, that it can have many different facets. It can have inequality of income or inequality of opportunities, as well as the inequality related to the intergenerational resources that we are going to need. So we believe at Ahmed, and the team that is working behind us, is to make sure that through our value chain, what we can contribute to address the inequality of opportunities, income, as well as the intergenerational, will be the best possible outcome that we can drive out of our operations. So that's how we are thinking aligned with it, that without addressing the SDG 10 and thoroughly understanding it and taking steps related to the opportunity as well as the income, only then we can create a lasting impact.
Yeah, and I think you've encompassed that very well, Saeed, by that, it's not just one area. When we talk about inequality, it's not just saying inko equal pay de do, just make everything the same. There are so many underpinning issues around this. So, for example, at the micro level, ill health, spending on health, protection. I mean, the list goes on. And one of the challenges we face as a country is how to address all of the inequalities. And I think this is the beauty of the SDGs, and I'm often quoted in saying this, that I think it's this wonderful universal language that we can all learn. And the SDGs provide this really fantastic framework, not just for companies, but also civil society and governments and academia, to really help understand where the challenges and issues can be addressed. Not just look at it from a problem perspective, but look at, what's our role individually and organizationally in addressing those issues and moving it forward. So you're absolutely right. It cuts across so many other aspects. So social and economical, political, we talked about prosperity, but inclusion and social protection, which are often sometimes forgotten as well. Now, as an organization, do you find that the conversation with your peers and with your seniors was easy in saying, humne ye karna chahiye? This is good for us as a business, but also it's the right thing to do. Was that conversation easy? Could you just help us understand the kind of dynamics? And I don't need to go into too much detail. This is, again, just to help those people listening in now and later to understand if they're having conversations again, like yourselves, with their peers or with seniors in trying to convince, if that's a word that I can use, that they should adopt a particular SDG, or in this particular case, SDG 10, then what was that conversation like for you? Asani se ho gaya tha, samajh aa gayi thi ki, thoda apne convince karna tha?
Well, the whole topic related to the sustainability, right? It's never an easy communication, because we generally, if you take any journey of any organization in this country, right, the sustainability, the first step is always was from the direction of the retailer, because that's what they want and that's why we are doing it. That was the starting point of most of the companies. And having the realization to actually think about the topic of sustainability, or think about SDGs or unified language, and to have the inner force, right, inside out approach of addressing the inequalities, right, that requires a difficult communication and conversation within the organization. But it all boils down to what I firmly believe in, to apply the approach of the golden circle, right? And the golden circle says that for any topic, right, you have to first address the why part, and then you go with the how part, and then you go with the what part. As long as your why part is clear within the organization, right, then the how and the what part becomes much more meaningful, and then you can actually track yourself against your stated objectives, right? So, coming back to it, when we talk about the inequalities in general, and considering Gul Ahmed from the textile sector, so we can say that the textile is the second largest employer, right, in this country, and it has a significant potential to impact with respect to the inequality. So that contributes to our why as well. And at the same time, in this country, there are somewhere around 27 to 30 million idle youths. 2/3 of them are from the female gender, and the 1/3 is from the male gender, right? So you have an idle youth that also contributes towards your why. And also having the diversity of thought within the organization, right? This will lead to the predictable business environment. So these all things actually contribute towards the why, and that actually forces us to look into the how and the what part of it.
Okay, that's very helpful, and I think you've surmised it in such a way that's helpful. I'm seeing some of the chat comments come in as well. That you said it's never an easy conversation. It doesn't necessarily have to be a difficult conversation, but it's never an easy conversation because it's competing priority. It means a mind shift in many aspects, but it can be an opportunity. And Nabila, you mentioned earlier that it allowed you to be innovative. Could you share a little bit about your journey as well, and how you managed to sell the SDGs to your seniors and your peers and say, we should be adopting this, and here's the innovation advantages that come out. So trying to understand the business case that you made, but also organizations and companies listening in, that they can see the competitive advantage of adopting the SDGs.
I can say that when we adopted it back in 2006, we had some difficulties because although our principal very well appreciated of adopting the SDGs or the principle, and as the we're reporting to Hino Motors Japan, and as you know that Hino Motors Japan is basically the sister company to the Motor Corporation. If you see their policies, they always encourage improved the sustainability development goals, adopted the sustainability development goal. For us to adopt and to create this SDG goal 10, first of all, the one challenge we have faced is to provide a safe and secure working environment for our minority and female staff, for employees. And if for them to grow, for them to perform well, we have to provide level field opportunity to them. We had to create a system for in a way that they are given all the equal opportunities for the performance. So we had to create a system. We had to do a lot of working on it. And we were able to provide the appraisal system based on objective-based appraisal system to them, equal opportunity, safety culture, corporate culture to them we have provided. Yet there were some challenges because mindset has to be changed. Although the management, the top management has never had any issue of adopting these rules, but like communicating these principles down like the lane, like from top to bottom, and asking them, the employees, to accept those. It was a journey for us. So, but thank God, Hino Park, we had diversified employees. We also have females in, apart from, except from the on the shop floor, we have female staff in almost each and every department in design and development, customer care, like marketing, HR, and like, so each and every department has some female staff and they've given the opportunities. Yes.
I really like the last point that you highlighted, Nabila. Excuse me. That every department has this balance of male and female. And I think, as we look at diversification in terms of products and services, I know one of our earlier calls when we were part of the Leaders Summit last year was around how important it is to understand products and services from a user experience. And we often forget that there's now a growing population of youth, but we have decision-making now back in the hands, balanced in most cases, in the households of women as well. So women are now making decisions around the products and services they buy, perhaps, even with cars and with other aspects of life that perhaps were not traditionally in their sort of domain. So products and services need to obviously be considered from that perspective as well. So it's great to hear that as an organization, we're seeing this uplift and this movement towards having a balanced workforce that are collectively developing and creating products and services. Saeed, from your perspective, what are the advantages of looking at inclusion and diversification from a products and services perspective? So question I'm trying to understand, we've got some questions coming in, so I'm trying to frame it. So a company may decide to diversify its activities, so its products and services, to enter into new markets that are related to its current business. And we've got the example from Nabila in terms of the auto industry, new car models, new colors, new features, for example. But being in the manufacturing industry, and forgive me if I'm incorrect in making this assumption, but we assume that most clothing manufacturers' audience is already female. How are you looking at being more innovative and creative in terms of your products and services now that you're more inclusive, more aware, you've got diversification, and you're addressing inequalities, from a holistic perspective? What does innovation look like for you at Gul?
Great. First, I think we have to see inside the organization, right? Gul Ahmed is part of the textile value chain, right? And the textile value chain, from cotton farming till the retail, this whole value chain happens within the bubble of community and society, right? So inside the organization, we need to make sure that we have the proper female representation in the workforce, and also having the diversity of thought and including less privileged people inside the workforce as well. But at the same time, within this value chain and talking about the innovation, we have to make sure regarding the responsible consumption and the production of the products. So at Gul Ahmed right now, we are looking into different kind of innovative products where we can utilize the waste from the production processes as well as from the post-consumer waste into a new kind of a product that can be again utilized. And by doing so, we can have a product range which is innovative, and at the same time, it will become less dependent on the amount of the current resources available in the world. So you are having the innovation within the product development relate towards the responsible sourcing and the production.
So that sounds to me like, I mean, there's a phrase that, you know, young generation use, sustainable fashion. So it feels like you're adopting, so you're leveraging, literally leveraging the SDGs to improve and enhance your business processes. So a movement and a process of fostering change to fashion, change to industry, change to demand, whilst being mindful of greater ecological integrity and social justice, because you mentioned that it's about making sure that the value chain is impacted as well positively. So is this a conscious decision of Gulemed, or you know, you thought we need to do something around climate, we need to do something around our waste, we need to do something around inclusion and poverty, and the sub essay ho gaya, or were you conscious in thinking कि नहीं meticulously हमने ये भी देखना ये भी देखना ये भी देखना?
Well, I'll elaborate. That's a very nice point. You know, working in the textile for the last, I think, about 17 years now. If I go back and let's say we are sitting in 2014, I think nobody was talking about having a sustainable fashion, right? Nobody was talking about that. And everybody was focused on having a good cotton or polyester mixture product at a cheapest possible price, right, from the textile value chain. There was no much talk about the sustainable fashion. And then all of a sudden, we see the raw material of the commodity prices going so high, and this resource dependency and the consumption pattern actually forces the individuals, buyers at the retailer level and manufacturers as well, that we cannot continue using the resources in the same pattern that we have been using, right? And then there is an inward approach to start looking into the product innovations where you can utilize the waste from the processes as well as from the post-consumer waste to reduce the amount of dependence on those resources. And this is directly linked with inequality in the form of the intergenerational inequalities. So that's how it went. And now, I think since this pandemic in 2019 onwards, if we see that there is a huge amount of emphasis almost from all the retail world in the world to have the sustainable fashion. Within the home textiles as well, everybody is asking about, can you produce the sustainable bed sheets, right? Using the production waste as well as the post-consumer waste, right? And within the principles of the textiles, the possibilities are there, right? And we have to go through with a certain learning curve. And then very soon you will see that most of the products range which we are seeing right now in the retail outlets will be coming from the responsibly sourced as well as the recycled cotton.
And I think that's why it's important to talk about reducing inequalities in its entirety in a holistic perspective, because as we said, you know, it impacts people's lives in so many different ways, but they're all integrated. And talk about ecological impact, environmental impact, repurposing waste, as it were. And we know there are textile companies, if I use that as an example, who are using plastic bottles to make jackets and jeans. And I came across something recently. One of our other members was talking about 37 degrees technology in sustainable cotton. We know about organic cotton and things like that. So they're all great things that are happening. Do you see a connectivity between being mindful of environmental impact? And the reason I ask this, and I'll come to you, Nabila, as well to ask a similar question, given that we've got COP26 climate action just around the corner, we're almost a month away from that happening in Glasgow. Do you think, as you look at reducing inequalities, SDG 10, you see more of the opportunities to address climate action as a result of this SDG, given everything that you've talked about already? Or do you think that they just run parallel to each other and it will and that's why we have another SDG that's working on climate action and it's independent to SDG 10?
Well, my take on this thing is that all these SDGs are interconnected very well. If you change one thing, the other thing is bound to change, right? As I said earlier, you talk about the inequality of opportunities or intergenerational inequalities, you have to think about responsible production and consumption, right? And within any manufacturing setup, what kind of procurement practices you adopt will eventually dictate what kind of product that you will end up with within your value chain. So Gul Ahmed is one of the largest user of the BCI cotton. Why we are actually going into the BCI cotton? It's primarily because it takes care about the people who are actually producing that cotton, taking care of the environment within which it is produced, and also the kind of practices related with the use of pesticides and the water within the cotton fields. So everything is linked. And also, when we take care about the overall value chain and talked about the waste utilization and the water consumption, it is all directly linked with all other SDGs as well. So for me, it's all linked.
Excuse me. Nabila, obviously you have a different aspect of climate to look at. And I don't want to go into too much detail around climate because we want to save that for our climate action SDG. But the automotive industry has a real opportunity to take advantage. I mean, you use fabric and cotton in your manufacturing of your cars, your products. What role has climate played in your decision making around adopting SDG 10? Did it play a role? Was there any kind of consideration, or is that just a byproduct again, as I asked Saeed?
Went wrong at your end or at our end? Anyway, okay.
Nabila? I think just have to unclick the mute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
That's okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, I was just asking basically in adopting SDG 10, and we talked about all of the other aspects of this particular SDG and how it impacts other impact indicators. Did climate action become apparent to you whilst you were looking at this particular SDG and think we need to obviously address climate? Well, we all need to address climate in some way, shape, or form. But did it become very apparent to you, or do you have a separate kind of outreach and thinking on climate action that's independent of what you're doing on reducing inequality? So I'm trying to understand, because one of the questions we were asked is there a link between what companies are doing on reducing inequalities and climate? Because if we can address climate issues, then maybe we can help reduce inequality.
Can you hear me? There's some net connectivity problems. I'm just resolving it. Just wait for a moment.
Sure. No issues. And again, for those people listening in, if you've got questions, then please try to frame them very short and succinct, so it's easier for us to frame that question and present that to our guests. Nabila, if you're ready, yeah. So I think I'll just reframe the question. It was from increasing wealth disparity in countries like Pakistan and disruptions that we face through demographic pressures, so political, religious, gender, all the other issues.
Faisal, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We can hear you.
I can't hear.
Okay, just wait for a moment.
Sure. And again, these are excuse me, these are just challenges of modern technology.
Yes,
Gee, we can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us? We'll try and Nabila, if you can hear us, just put your hand icon up, and then we can come back to you. Saeed, if I move across to you, what does the next?
Hello.
Yes, Nabila, can you hear us? Can you hear me?
Okay. Faisal, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
There's some network connectivity issue.
Do you want to sign out and sign back in using the same link that you have? This is quite common. This is not an issue. If you log out and log back in using the same link, maybe that will help.
Yeah. Zubair, if you allow me, I see a couple of questions that addressing towards the Gul Ahmed. If you allow me to share something from my screen, and I'll just take not more than 3 to 5 minutes to go through with it. And I think then it can be a very good standpoint from the Gul Ahmed side. If Nabila is ready, she can take the place if or she needs some time.
Bilkul, please, share your thoughts. It'd be good to hear what you're working on as well.
Great. Just can I share?
Yeah, Bilkul Karle, you should be able to share.
Can you guys see the screen?
Yeah, Bilkul. Perfect.
Well, that's the original thought process, and I always believe in the golden circle, as I updated earlier. And within the organization, if you address the why part, right, it is the backbone of making any change. So I already updated that the textiles in the value chain can create a huge amount of impact, being the largest employer, and also addressing the benefit to the business as well. Now, within Gul Ahmed, this is the complete value chain that we have. We are procuring cotton and then converting it into different products, as simple as this. And I used to say the cotton portion or the raw material portion is the biggest portion of the whole value chain, right? Gul Ahmed, as I updated earlier, is the largest portion of the BCI cotton, which is grown having the consideration of the people and the environment within which it is grown. And at the same time, we are within the value chain talking about the waste recycling, which is linked with the SDG 12, reducing the intergenerational inequality and having the responsible production and consumption. And at the same time, we are having the water recycling, and necessary infrastructure is in place to actually achieve the ZLD as well. Now, this is the concept that I want to share, that this is the value chain within which we operate, and this value chain actually is inside the community, right? We are operating not in isolation, but within the society. And it has a lot more to contribute towards the climate action, clean water, and the other SDGs. And that's why this particular SDG is all linked with the inequalities. Now, what we are doing inside the organization, we are working towards the diverse and empowered workforce, having the female representation, having certain internal targets within our organization to achieve, to have the representation of female, to give them the opportunity to contribute. And then we are benchmarking ourselves, where do we stand within the industry or the other globally as well. And at the same time, giving opportunity for the certain people having the disabilities, because it's such a labor intensive work, and people who are cannot speak, but they can actually contribute towards the certain operations of textiles. So having a certain portion of individual in certain manufacturing segments, right, can contribute towards creating equality of opportunity for those less privileged or marginalized segments of the society. And also having the future leader programs, where you give an equal platform for the male and the females to actually come and contribute towards the value chain. And also within the organization, having the employee well-being initiatives, and which is primarily directed towards making sure that they are getting the actual wage, health benefits, right, accommodation facilities, and having the other financial links and the benefits. And finally, the community within which we operate, right, we have to make sure that Gul Ahmed has been providing some quality education, donations, vocational trainings, and the job placement procedures as well. And this is what linked, I was stating earlier with respect to the waste and how this whole waste thing is linked with it. Textile as a value chain is considered among the most biggest source, one of the biggest source of the pollution within the within this geosphere, right? So having taking steps towards the circularity initiatives of the product development will eventually contribute towards the SDG 12 as well. So that's what I wanted to share, and let me, yeah, that's pretty much all.
So this is really helpful, Saeed, because what it does, it helps put some context around the journey that you've taken, and you've helped some people understand how they can articulate this conversation with their peers within the organization, but also their supply chain as well. And I'm so glad that you've looked and reviewed and reflected on your supply chain as well, because organizations sometimes, when they adopt the SDGs, they look at just the first tier, which is their internal organization, and that's the first correct step to take. But we also need to encourage looking at all of the different tiers as well, and the different layers within an organization as well. So not just having it intricular to the organization itself and its workforce, but also suppliers and stakeholders in the wider community. And it's so lovely to see that put together in that context as well. I think we're still having trouble with Hino, with Nabila jumping in. So we'll just carry on the conversation. I'll take some of the questions. I know there's some tweets coming in.
Yeah, what I see, there was somebody's asking question regarding what Gul Ahmed can do with respect to the women artisans from the rural communities. Well, textile is a fascinating field, right? We can do a lot with respect to fabric, right? And I think the rural communities sometimes produce, the most beautiful handwork, right? So we try to include some of the rural communities, right, from the Lower Punjab, right? And the idea was to have some handicraft product, and then first try to put them and source them from the from those areas, and then place them through our retail shops as well. And for our export clients, we try to actually make some product portfolio of the local Pakistani products, right? And then presenting them to the European retailers as well. But then we have to see that, okay, the cost consciousness is there, and when the lots of handicrafts things are involved, then scaling it up for the magnitude of the quantity that we need to supply becomes another issue, right? So the quantity has to be very, very limited, right? And there are lots of good things that are being done by the rural communities, primarily with respect to the handmade rugs, right? Or the kitchen textiles, right? Beautiful rural range products were there. And I think some of these products are also available on the Ideas by Gul Ahmed shelves as well.
I just wanted to ask you, Saeed, often when I'm in conversations around the SDGs, people talk about innovation and, thinking outside of the box and being really kind of creative with products and being concerned about the environment as well. And I think, we touched upon it earlier, that we've got generational change happening at the same time as well, where product decision making does include impact on the environment. And then, like I say, I don't want to dwell too much on the environment, but just to take some context from you, when you're looking at moving the business forward in terms of the SDGs, and I know you've talked about organic products, we've got cotton and hemp, for example, and even linen, and then you've talked about recycling and repurposing products and waste to be better used for maybe creating other products as well. But what about futuristic and innovation in terms of fabric? So I know there's Tencel, which is made out of cellulose kind of fabric. And then obviously we've got a growing vegan community as well, not just in the West, but also in Pakistan. So something like Pinatex, but also Econol, I came across in a conversation recently that's really kind of repurposing industrial plastic and waste fabric and finishing and all the things that you talked about. So I don't want you to go into any detail about that, because that's your business, and maybe we can park that for the climate action webinar. But when we talk about reducing inequalities and upskilling people and providing employment opportunities either in the workforce or in the supply chain or the value system, and we talked about handicrafts, how easy do you feel it is to move forward on your SDGs programs and your SDG journey, example number 10, when you're dealing with new materials like that? Is that a bigger investment you then have to make as an organization in upskilling workforce, male or female or otherwise? Because now you're working with non-traditional fabrics. And if you get it wrong, then that's a huge expense and a loss, right? So are you having to look at upskilling in those, if you want to stay ahead of the times with innovative products and services, do you have to make a bigger investment? Because I know that's some of the questions that we get asked at the Global Compact. If I adopt the SDGs as an organization, mujhe kharcha hoga. There'll be a cost to us. We have to make some sacrifice or some trade-off. Do you think the investment is worth it?
Well, first, Pakistan is one of the largest producer of the cotton, right? So all the product development, right, within the textile is primarily driven out of the product development from the cotton basis, right? The challenge, the biggest challenge that we face, that the possibilities are there, having a recycled product. But when you go into the recycling of the cotton, or when you try to have, let's say, the handicraft work, right, that can actually give the women's empowerment in a rural area and place that product in front of the European retailers, I believe that they are not even ready to actually buy the product at certain amount of premium, because the whole concept of the value chain right now is built around having the lowest cost product in the shortest possible time. And when you try to actually empowering the less privileged segment of your country and making a product, then there will be a certain lag is involved, and that lag translates into certain kind of margins within the prices. For example, you talk about the BCI cotton, right? So the BCI cotton has been grown under strict supervision, right? They take care about the environment, they take care about the people who are growing it, and they take care about the practices as well. But then they charge a premium for it as well. And Gul Ahmed, as part of the biggest contributor within the value chain, we became one of the biggest user of the BCI cotton. That's our contribution. And then we use our economies of scale to actually still provide the BCI cotton at a very competitive prices within the country and globally as well. But when you talk about going and stretching further into, handicraft products, utilizing the recycled products, right? Then there will be certain amount of the premium that will add up into the value chain, right? And also the speed of the value chain will get impacted.
So we see that with chocolate and cocoa and coffee products and things like that, where it says fair trade, organic and things like that. Do you think, like you said, there's a lag? How long do you feel that lag is? Do you have any idea? Kab tak ye khatam ho jayega, where the costs are absorbed by both the producer and the customer? Because at the moment it seems the cost is being passed on to the customer.
Well, I think the biggest influence, the only one individual who has the most stronger influence is the customer. Customer who is sitting in the European markets or the US markets or any domestic customer. The more they start demanding this kind of product, the whole value chain will start moving into that particular direction to make it at least a cost-effective solution.
And that then helps an organization like you produce more cost-effectively, which means you can really deliver on your promise of reducing inequalities, because you can then afford to pay and manage all the other aspects of reducing inequalities in Goal 10. So that makes sense. I think it's perfect math. Nabila, welcome back.
Yeah, sure, Nabila is there. But I just want to add one thing, with the whole topic of sustainability, as before this SDGs, I think there was no uniform language. At least now people are starting into one unified language. And similarly, within the field of textiles, now the people are starting to realize we all need to talk with the same language of recycled cotton products as well. So I think If in, let's say, it was introduced in 2015, I think we are 6 years down the road. Now the people are trying to have, okay, if you are following SDG, you have a uniform language, whether I speak or somebody from Hino, like Nabila is speaking, we're all talking about the same topic. So the understanding the language is coming up. So I believe more time.
Well, this is a time for collective action, and you know, like I referred to at the beginning of the conversation, that the UN Secretary General had really called upon all of us, not just businesses, that we need to work collectively, and hence the, you know, uniting business, but also that this is decade of action. Nabila, if you can hear me, we'll ask you just a couple of questions that came in on social media. You unclick or unmute.
Yes, I can hear you.
Fantastic. Good. Welcome back. I know we sometimes have technological disruptions, and that's just the world that we have to live in now. One of the questions that were asked earlier, and it were actually 3 questions, so I'm going to try and summarize it in one, is that did you find it difficult to talk about gender uplift in your organization, being automotive industry, which is traditionally hard skilled and very male dominated? If we look at the past sort of 50, 60 years, was that conversation difficult for you to lead? And what was the response? And again, I'm not asking you to go into any kind of detail, but just to get an understanding, because I think the reason for being asked the question is that there are probably some participants who work in a similar kind of industry, or work in an industry where it's very traditional male-orientated job descriptions. So what was then needed after the conversation to work with HR teams to change job profiles and job descriptions so they could be more balanced?
Okay. As you have already described, yes, the automobile industry is a very male-dominated industry as per the job requirement and the manufacturing side. So as already explained, we don't have any females on the manufacturing side, on the shop floor side. But fortunately, the Hino policy, especially HR policies, are very versatile and very well developed, in which we ensure that there's an equal opportunity policy for each and every employee. So when the person, so there's no discrimination and there's no of the job requirement or specification, which is especially discriminating on a specific certain group. Like, so as I've already explained, that apart from the shop floor, we have female employed staff in almost each and every department. So it means we have given the opportunities to them. They have been hired on the entry base, and they have given the opportunity to grow through career development. And the females and the minority have given all the opportunities for training and development, and their career path has been defined. And they are always in fast trackers implies, so organizations usually track those. They like traced on those kind of implies, and they work on those. So over here we don't have any issue whether it's a gender based policy. No, there's no discrimination on the gender base. So as well, you're performing based on your appraisal, performing well in line with your corporate objective, your individual objective, you can grow. So yes, we had problems, and then there's a very safe working environment for females also. So the open communication policies over here, we never have any issue, no discrimination, no harassment issues, nothing, no grievances from female staff. So if we look at the past, like 20, 30 years, like history of Hino Park, we had a lot of female staff. Those who have led due to their personal or their, they grow professionally for their career development. Apart from that, we have a very good open communication policy.
That's really helpful, and I think you've touched upon some key points there that we sometimes overlook or not give enough importance to things like workplace safety and security. And I'm not talking about anything in specific, but protection and safeguarding in that aspect is very important if we're to really reduce inequality. So thank you for highlighting that. We're almost at the end of our session, and there's so much more that I wanted to talk about and ask you guys. So as I said, we won't end the conversation here. I mean, we will for today, but we'll certainly invite you back for more conversation. We'll continue some of the questions and answers with you in the form of maybe perhaps an article for LinkedIn, and Nida can touch base with you around that. But just before we kind of really wrap up, I've just got a couple of questions for you, and it's something I ask all of my guests just to kind of get a sense of where they see the future direction, not just of their organizations, but also the journey they're taking, and also where Pakistan as a country can play its role much stronger in really uniting people and businesses for collective action. So I just want you to cast your mind to 2030. It's January the 1st. You wake up in the morning, you're looking out through your window and you see the sun glaring right back at you. You have your tea or your coffee or your fruit juice in your hand, and you look back over the last 10 years and you think, great, this is what we've achieved. What would be the world that you would like to see, bearing in mind everything that you've said to us about reducing inequalities? What would be your world on the 1st of January 2030? And Nabila, I'll ask you first.
Okay, I think what I will be looking forward is the women empowerment, giving the equal opportunity, and giving the women, especially as you know, the population, like more than 50% population of women. And I think the world should, and they are working on the sustainability development goal and everything. They're working on the women empowerment and giving the equal opportunity, educational opportunities of women. Let them make the decision. They should be given the role of making decision. They can be the leaders, and as of the COVID-19 and provide that we have seen a lot of, and due to after the social media development, we have seen a lot of the entrepreneurial womanship developing, women doing household like businesses, doing a very well, opportunities and working hard to raise their families.
Okay.
So in order to develop your community, the society, for a future generation, because women empowerment not only for the working, it also gives the opportunities the women to develop for the children, for the future generation. That's
So
very necessary.
And so cultural and economical decision making,
it should also be
more balance in decision making. That's fantastic.
Yes.
Saeed, what does 1st of January 2030 look like for you?
Well, first, it's a very nicely framed question. I think, well, if I imagine, and imagination is always bigger than reality, I think I see a world which is more tolerant, gender neutral, and at the same time more conscious about the climate action, right? And for Pakistan, I see there is no reason, right, in the coming 10 years, Pakistan will respond really positively with respect to the climate action, because it is the fight for our survival. We are not the biggest polluters, but we are the ones among the top 10 who are going to be impacted because of all these activities. Yeah. So I see the kind of communications that I had with UNGC and also with the other players with respect to the climate action. I think the whole business community is aligned to take some serious actions, and I see a change towards.
That's really uplifting. That's really uplifting what you said. That what both of you have said, inspiration, uplifting. That we have the opportunity to really shape the course of direction and action that we wish to take, and we all have collective responsibility. But ek cheez aap donon ne kaha hai ki akele nahi ho sakta. We can't do this by ourselves. We all need to work together. Saeed Bhai from Gul Ahmed and Nabila Faisal from Hino Motors. It's been an absolute pleasure having both of you on for this In Conversation series. Like I said, the conversation will continue in many ways, shapes and forms through articles and posts that you share with us, that we can share with our wider network, not just in Pakistan, but outside, through our SDG roadshows that we'll be resuming soon, to the SDG Me accelerator and assessments that we do with companies on ESG and their sustainability journey. So all the other fantastic things that are being done to accelerate action towards a more positive Pakistan. We now have this fantastic pool of people that are sharing their insights and stories. So thank you for that. Again, for those of you who want to share further, hashtags to remember are Decade of Action, Global Compact Pakistan, Leading the World by Example, and obviously Uniting Business. And you can find us on Facebook and LinkedIn and share your stories with us as well. We're back next month, the first Wednesday of the month, with In Conversation with two new guests. This time we'll be tackling SDG 11. And if any of you who are listening to this now as participants or the recorded session, you want to share your thoughts and insights on what you're doing to advance the SDGs, please do drop us a line, share that with us. If you would like to be one of our panelists or guest speakers on one of our In Conversation series, the webinars that we do with the Global Compact Leaders Summit, our SDG roadshows, or our Leaders Summit that we'll be hosting next year in Pakistan, then please do drop us a line, and we'll work something out with you in that regard. Saeed Bhai and Nabila, thank you so much for your time, your energy, and your insight. And we look forward to hearing more great achievements as you drive forward SDG 10 and really make a difference in the industry that you're in and pave the way forward for many more positive impact actions, and keep us posted. Stay safe, stay well, and I look forward to speaking with you soon. Take care. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you. Hafiz. Thank you, everybody.